In 1941, one of the worst wars in European history began between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. Before the Second World War, the two countries were tied to a temporary treaty, Molotov-Ribbentrop Treaty, but Hitler broke the treaty and invaded the Soviet Union. This battle is called the Eastern Front, or Great Patriotic War. Germany, led by Hitler, invaded the Soviet Union with 3 million troops. The invasion was one of the largest military campaigns in history. There were 3 main goals. 1. Leningrad, north. 2. Moscow, central. 3. Stalingrad and the Caucasus, in the south, to seize oil resources. At first, the German forces advanced massively and the Soviet forces fell into disarray. Hitler hoped to capture Moscow before winter arrived, but the German forces were weakened by the severity of the winter and the resistance of the Soviet forces. Over the summer, German forces occupied one city after another, the Baltic region, Belarus, Ukraine. They quickly advanced towards Moscow, but as time went on, the Soviet forces resisted. Finally, in the winter of 1941, the German forces stopped in front of Moscow. The bone-chilling cold, logistics shortages, and Soviet counterattacks halted the Germans. Turning the tide of war is one of the most important battles. Hitler wanted to capture Stalingrad, but Soviet forces put up strong resistance. In 1942, Hitler made a new plan. This time, his target was in the south, the Caucasus oil field. German forces entered Stalingrad. This is where the worst urban war in history begins. On the streets, in the rubble, in every building, there is war. Blood flows for months. Finally, in February 1943, the Soviet forces surrounded the German forces by conducting Operation Barbarossa. The entire German Sixth Army was surrounded. 91,000 German soldiers surrendered, which was a major defeat for Hitler. It was the largest tank battle in history. Since then, German forces have never been able to advance inside the Soviet Union. Hitler took a new plan to deal with the shock of Stalingrad. In the summer of 1943, the Battle of Kursk, the largest tank battle in human history, began. Soviet forces had already prepared. Although the Germans launched a heavy attack, the Soviet forces successfully resisted and pushed the German forces back. In early 1945, Soviet forces liberated Eastern Europe and began attacking Berlin. In April 1945, the Red Army arrived at the gates of Berlin. The German capital was surrounded from all sides. A fierce fight ensued. Hitler committed suicide in his bunker on April 30, 1945. May 8, 1945, the official end of the war in Europe, known in history as V-Day, Victory Day. As a result of this war, more than 2 crore people were killed. The Soviet Union emerged as a world superpower. This was the main cause of Hitler's downfall.